Hey everyone, you Globies are going to want to stick around because I'm going to give you something to think about. If we were orbiting and spinning like they say we are, it would be self evident. And when I say self evident, I mean self evident. You would know if you were orbiting at 66,000 miles per hour and spinning at 1,000 miles per hour on the equator, of course. It's a standard practice of both sides of this argument to just use the equator at 1,000 miles per hour as a standard. So, at the equator, any object on the Earth would experience a 2,000 mile per hour fluctuation twice a day. This is because as you're spinning 1,000 miles per hour, when you are in the same line with the direction of the orbital path, you would be adding 1,000 miles per hour. Then when you're on the inside of the orbit, you're going back against the direction of the orbital path, so you would have to subtract 1,000 miles per hour. Now, this is not argued by Globies. This is simple physics. It's the way it is, just the same way that a bicycle wheel doesn't spin as fast towards the center as it does towards the outside. If it didn't have those variations in speed, you wouldn't have a spinning wheel. So we're talking about something that can't be argued unless, of course, you want to rewrite physics. So we're going to start there. Let's add a visual picture to it. When you're spinning along with the Earth, here's the orbital path, 66,000 miles per hour. When you're on the outside going in the same direction, you add 1,000 miles per hour. When you're on the inside, you're going back against the direction of the orbital path, so you subtract 1,000 miles per hour. I'll let P-Brain reiterate.
Ours would have a 2,000 on the outside. You'd be rotating in the orbital direction, and you'd have to add 1,000 miles per hour. When you're on the inside, you're rotating against the orbital direction. You'd have to subtract 1,000 miles per hour. That's a 2,000 mile per hour fluctuation every 12 hours, every day of the year.
Now we're going to listen to one of the most smart-mouthed, arrogant, and cocky globetards on the market explain why we wouldn't feel this motion. And then I'll explain to you where he went wrong and how we would.
Okay, you know what? Let's humor him. I'm going to use his numbers.
More accurately, he's going to use the correct numbers according to physics. So we're talking about everybody's numbers.
He says it's 2,000 miles per hour every 12 hours. Okay?
It is.
So that's 166 and 2/3 miles per hour every hour. Okay? That's 2 and 7/9 miles per hour every minute, or 0 to 60 in 21.6 minutes.
This is where you go off track, kid. I'm going to let him ramble for a little bit just so you can see for yourself how stupid he is.
Okay, for comparison's sake, an object in free fall on planet Earth like this is going to experience an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second. And that you can definitely feel. You could definitely feel it if you were falling, right? The acceleration that this guy is worried about, though, is 0.02 meters per second. So try to imagine, if you will, falling, but at 0.2% the normal rate that you'd fall on planet Earth. You can't. I bet you can't do it. You know why? Because
yes, we do know why. It's because you are asking us to imagine something that is not familiar to us or you or anybody.
You wouldn't even feel it.
What the kid's doing is breaking the 2,000 miles per hour over 12 hours down into average rate of change. 2,000 miles per hour over 12 hours is 166.66 miles per hour. That breaks down into 2.77 miles per hour per minute. Then he goes off the rails, puts it into unrelatable terms, 0 to 60 in 21.6 minutes. Can you relate to that? Have you ever been in a vehicle or a boat or anything and went from 0 to 60 and made sure you took 21.6 minutes to do it? I haven't. I don't doubt if any of you have either. What he should have done here is to break it into terms that you can relate to, something that you work with on a daily basis, something that everybody understands. 2.77 miles per hour per minute breaks down into 0.046 miles per hour per second. Now that is unrelatable. 0.046 miles per hour per second. He goes metric here where, he likes to jump back from standard to metric, which is not a good practice if you're not trying to confuse people. So, how do you put that into relatable terms? Well, with speed, miles per hour, you have a distance, correct? 0.046 miles per hour per second breaks down to 0.81 inches per second. This means that every second of the day, you would be going 0.81 inches further than you did the second before. So your feet are on the earth. They would go that extra distance because your feet are touching the earth, and your upper body would try to stay where it was. So you're going to be 3/4 of an inch off every second, and in about 5 seconds, you're going to be rocked up on your heels and like, whoa, and you're going to have to lean to compensate for that. 3/4 of an inch every second is well enough to measure, observe, and be self-evident, or you'll be on your butt. When you get to the 12 hours point where you go back on the other direction, now you're going to have to lean the opposite way because you're going to travel 0.81 inches less distance than you did the second before every second. Every second, 3/4 less, 3/4 less. Now, if a globie or if anybody that understands physics wants to try to argue that you would not feel and be very aware of 0.81 inches change every second, well, then they need to go back to basic physics or just bag the whole operation because they absolutely don't have a clue. If you want to prove it to yourself, get yourself a trolley car or something and have it accelerate that extra every second and see for yourself. You're going to have to lean. The body is very sensitive. It's a very sensitive mechanism, and it's going to have to compensate for that so that you don't land on your tush or your roly-poly head. So, kid, you're wrong. Now, the real diehard globe tards are going to try to confuse you. And we're talking about hard turds like Greater Sapien, Simon Dan, Professor Dave, Baldy Cats. Who else? I mean, you guys know who we're talking about. They're all going to break it down into some negligible sounding motion. When we're speaking of the motion of the earth, you just can't say 1,000 miles per hour to Fight the Flat Earth Craig because he just won't accept that. He immediately says, no, you can't measure it that way. You can't measure miles per hour. You have to measure it in degrees per hour, 15 degrees per hour. Okay. Or he says 1 rotation per day. You know, that's slow, and he'll compare it to the hour hand on a clock. It's twice as slow as the hour hand on a clock. Well, he's hoping that you will overlook the fact that we're talking about equivalent terms here. These things all equal each other. 1,000 miles per hour is 1,000 miles per hour. Now, if you had the hour hand on the clock was as long as the radius of the earth, guess what? It's going to be moving 2,000 miles per hour at the end. 2,000 miles per hour. So they're trying to say, you wouldn't feel the earth rotating in 1 rotation per day. That's twice as slow as the hands on a clock. Yeah, a 12-inch clock. And you guys are morons. Ugh. So there you go. Basic physics. If you want to try to convince yourself that you would not feel a 3/4 of an inch change every second, if you want to think that that wouldn't put you on your butt if you didn't compensate for it within 5 seconds, if you want to just step outside of known physics and start making up your own shit, well, all I can say is more power to you. Go ahead and just be as retarded as you want to be. You live on a flat, motionless earth the way God made it. If we were doing all the crazy motions and spinning and twirling and orbiting like they say, it would be self-evident. Catch me in my next video, because I'm really going to put the screws to you. Another even more obvious falsehood of the globe will be torn apart.